In the pre-dawn hours of July 1st, 2025, while most of the world was asleep, the Atlas survey system in Hawaii was methodically scanning the heavens for asteroids. Among the millions of familiar points of light, a strange, faint dot appeared. At first, it was a signal so minor that the system's computers nearly dismissed it. But as the data was cross-referenced, astronomers realized something was wrong. Its trajectory was unlike anything ever recorded in our solar system. A preliminary analysis at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory (JPL) revealed the object's orbital eccentricity was 6.1, a figure that could only belong to a hyperbolic trajectory, meaning it was not bound by the sun's gravity. In other words, this was a visitor from interstellar space. Its speed clocked in at 130,000 miles per hour over 209,000 km/h, more than double the velocity needed to escape our solar system. But what stunned experts the most was its direction of travel. Instead of approaching from a random angle, the object was sliding almost perfectly along the ecliptic plane, the very path on which Earth and the other planets orbit the Sun with an inclination of only 5 degrees. For a random object from deep space, such an alignment was nearly impossible. The statistical odds of this occurring were estimated to be just 2 in 1,000. A few days later, the Minor Planet Center (MPC) confirmed the discovery and gave it a name, 3I Atlas, the third interstellar visitor, following Oumuamua in 2017 and Borisov in 2019. But the initial excitement quickly turned to bewilderment. Images captured by the Hubble Space Telescope showed a faint halo surrounding its nucleus, not quite a comet's tail, but more like a mist drifting ahead of the object. The more they analyzed it, the more confused the observation teams became. A small object, from the farthest reaches of the cosmos, had managed to align with our planetary plane and was glowing in a way no one could explain. At that moment, no one dared to say anything for certain. But within the astronomical community, 3 Atlas had become the opening move in a series of questions that, to this day, have no definitive answer. Was this just an unusual comet, or was it something more? Once 3I Atlas was confirmed as an interstellar object, a fleet of telescopes around the world turned to face it. With each passing night, new data rendered old models meaningless. Optical observations showed its trajectory was strangely stable. It moved as if it were on a pre-programmed path, showing none of the natural wobbles typically seen in a comet battered by the solar wind. An image from Hubble in mid-July revealed another baffling detail: the glowing tail of 3I Atlas wasn't trailing behind it. It was angled back towards the sun. In cometary physics, this is a near paradox. The solar wind always pushes material away from the sun, creating the iconic tail everyone recognizes. Here, that model collapsed. Some scientists at the University of Cambridge tried to explain this as an anti-tail, a geometric illusion caused by larger, slower-moving dust particles reflecting light from a different angle. But as subsequent images showed the phenomenon persisting for weeks, that hypothesis began to crumble. In parallel, kinematic data revealed something even more incredible: tiny variations in its acceleration. 3I Atlas wasn't just coasting on gravity. It appeared to be making periodic, minor course corrections, subtle nudges that occurred in a cycle. The changes were minuscule, only a few parts per thousand, but they were distinct enough to appear clearly in high-precision spectroscopic measurements. Researchers at JPL admitted they could find no plausible physical cause. If this were due to outgassing, one technical report stated, the thrust would be random. Here, the deviations are directional. Professor Avi Loeb of Harvard University, who had previously stirred controversy by suggesting Oumuamua could be a form of extraterrestrial technology, immediately weighed in. This is consistent with a thin object capable of reflecting or using light for propulsion. If we dismiss the possibility of an artificial origin simply because it's bold, we are losing an opportunity to understand the universe. His statement deeply divided the scientific community. Most astronomers remained cautious. They stressed that these anomalies could simply be a random combination of natural phenomena that our models have not yet accounted for. However, everyone agreed on one thing: 3I Atlas was behaving like no comet ever observed. Slowly, The cold, hard numbers began to push the object beyond the realm of pure physics and into a philosophical question about life and intelligence in the cosmos. And as the James Webb Space Telescope was scheduled for its observation in August, the scientific world understood that regardless of the outcome, this next look in the mirror could change how we see the entire universe. In August of 2025, the James Webb Space Telescope JWST officially aimed its golden mirrors at 3 At this point, the object was about 1.7 astronomical units from the Sun, close enough for Webb's infrared sensors to get a clear signal, yet far enough to avoid interference from the Sun's glare. The astronomical world held its breath. If 3I Atlas was just a strange comet, Webb would expose its chemical makeup, and the mystery would be solved. But the first results only deepened the confusion. Spectrographic data showed 3I Atlas was rich in carbon dioxide, while its water vapor levels were abnormally low. This discrepancy was so great that the analysis team had to double-check their entire processing algorithm. A normal comet, even at this distance, should exhibit a much higher ratio of water vapor. This meant the object was either formed in an environment far colder than the outer edges of our solar system, or it was made of materials unfamiliar to us. What makes the Webb telescope truly special is its ability to detect variations in light intensity over time. As the team filtered out the noise and compared the data, they discovered a nearly perfect, repeating pulse with a cycle of approximately 11 seconds. No one dared to claim this was an artificial signal, but such a regular oscillation didn't fit any known random physical process. In a preliminary report, engineers described it as a structured oscillation and decided to forward this portion of the data to an independent analysis team at the SETI Institute for verification. Another piece of data was equally astonishing. High-resolution infrared images revealed two thin, symmetrical jets of gas erupting from the object's poles, perfectly stable and aligned with its direction of flight. In cometary physics, such plumes are rarely uniform. They are typically distorted by the object's spin. Yet here, they looked almost as if they were being controlled to maintain equilibrium. When the results were announced during a NASA teleconference, the room fell silent. One researcher described the feeling as like looking at something that was both familiar and utterly inexplicable. The international press immediately ran with the story, but NASA remained cautious, confirming only that JWST data reveals features never before seen in any comet in our solar system. Webb's findings didn't answer the question, they just made it bigger. If 3 Atlas was natural, why did it emit a periodic pulse and perfectly symmetrical jets? And if it wasn't natural, then who, or what, created it? Between those two possibilities, humanity was forced to admit that the line between a physical phenomenon and technology can sometimes be separated by a single cycle of light. Just days after the James Webb team submitted their preliminary report, the first leaks began to surface online. A short paragraph, allegedly from an internal NASA memo, went viral. 11-second repeating cycle, stable intensity, potentially structured, though the source was unverified. Those words were enough to ignite the global imagination. Astronomy forums and science news channels exploded with theories had Webb just recorded a deliberate signal from deep space. From there, social media became a battlefield. Certain accounts claiming to be industry insiders asserted that the U.S. Navy had detected low-frequency signals from beneath the ocean that matched the rhythm of Webb's data. Tweets with the hashtags Atlas Signal and Project Silence spread faster than the actual science. Within 3 days, nearly 10 million discussions revolved around a single question. If 3I Atlas is communicating, who is listening? Scientific agencies were forced to respond. NASA issued a brief statement asserting there was no evidence the 11-second signal was artificial and that the data was still being analyzed to rule out instrument noise. The European Space Agency also confirmed it had detected no modulated radio or infrared waves. However, this very caution and restraint only convinced the public that something was being hidden. Meanwhile, the mainstream press tried to balance fact and fiction. The Atlantic called 3 Atlas a Rorschach test for humanity's faith in science, while Scientific American published an editorial emphasizing, "Curiosity is the engine, but verification is the foundation." On the other side, YouTube channels and podcasts spreading conspiracy theories racked up tens of millions of views, with sensational titles like "Webb receives alien signal, NASA stays silent." Never before had an interstellar object become such a massive social phenomenon. The event exposed a stark paradox. The vacuum of scientific information had itself become fuel for the collective imagination. And in the midst of this storm of rumors, researchers understood they needed more than just data. They needed a definitive answer, something that only time and further observation could provide, as the wave of rumors about 3I Atlas had yet to subside. A group of independent researchers began to look at the problem from a different angle. They didn't focus on the signal, but on history. In the last 8 years, humanity had witnessed 3 interstellar objects pass through the solar system, a phenomenon once considered almost impossible. The frequency was too high to be a random coincidence. In late 2025, a team at the University of Cambridge published a striking analysis based on the average appearance rate of interstellar objects from classical astronomical models. The probability of 3 bodies as large as Oumuamua, Borisov, and 3I Atlas appearing in less than a decade was less than 1 in 10,000. In other words, this felt more like a series of cyclical events than a random occurrence. Deeper comparisons revealed a pattern that was hard to ignore. Oumuamua, the first object, had no tail, reflected light strangely, and exhibited non-gravitational acceleration. Borisov, on the other hand, was a perfectly classic comet, almost as if to reinforce the belief that Oumuamua was just an exception. And 3 Atlas, it combined both properties. It displayed cometary activity, but it was accompanied by unexplainable characteristics. It was as if each object was a piece in an evolving test, unfolding over time. Professor Avi Loeb spoke out once again, suggesting this could be a deliberate series of probes, a form of galactic survey using technology we are not yet able to recognize. Though his opinion remained controversial, some astrophysicists admitted that the 3 objects shared a consistency in direction and kinetic energy, hinting at a unified origin at the galactic level. No one dared to claim this was proof of extraterrestrial intelligence. But the coincidence forced the scientific community to expand its thinking. Was this the natural result of cometary collisions across the galaxy, or a deliberately designed sequence of probes that we had just happened to intercept? With 3I Atlas, all the old explanations had become obsolete. What was once an exception was now starting to form a new pattern, and that is precisely what made it the most frightening object humanity had ever observed. As the analyses of a probe series began to spread, the atmosphere within the scientific world suddenly changed. Those who had once enthusiastically shared public data now grew reserved. Updates on 3I Atlas on NASA's website became less frequent. While some European observation groups reported they were advised to delay the publication of results until a full analysis is complete. On academic forums, the word confidential began appearing in internal emails, a rarity for a typical astronomical subject. To the outside world, this silence only made things more suspicious. Several science journalists filed Freedom of Information Act requests for the data, but most were delayed. When the New York Times directly asked a NASA representative for the reason, the reply was curt. Portions of the data are undergoing a security review prior to public release. At international conferences, the topic of 3I Atlas was pulled from the agenda at the last minute without a clear reason. Even researchers who had once publicly refuted the artificial origin hypothesis began to fall silent. Some argued it was a temporary measure to avoid sensationalism at a sensitive time. Others believed there was a coordinated effort among major agencies to control the public narrative. Whatever the real reason, the end result was the same. A curtain of silence fell over the entire story. The research community was caught between scientific duty and political pressure, while the public was left with 1,000 unanswered theories. In that void, 3I Atlas was no longer a comet. It had become a symbol of a hidden truth, of the fear that there are things the universe knows about us, but that we are not yet allowed to know about the universe. By the end of 2025, as 3I Atlas moved farther from the sun and faded into darkness, observatories began to synthesize all the remaining data. The dry numbers suddenly sketched out an astonishing portrait, an object smaller than a bridge, yet demonstrating thermal stability, flight orientation, and material structure far beyond any known comet. Spectrographic analysis pointed to unusual electromagnetic fluctuations, suggesting the possible existence of an internal power regulation system. Multiple independent teams tried to simulate how the object maintained its shape and brightness in such a harsh environment. No model could replicate the results. Every time science tried to find a natural explanation, the data pulled them right back to where they started. A physicist at Caltech wrote in a final summary report, "If this is entirely natural, then the very definition of the word natural needs to be rewritten." That statement, though philosophical, perfectly captured the sentiment of the research community. They did not want to believe in the absurd, but they could not deny what was plainly before their eyes. The deeper we looked, the more 3I Atlas forced humanity to confront its own limits. Perhaps it was just an ancient chunk of ice that happened to be shaped like a machine. Or perhaps it was a vessel, sent billions of years ago by beings we have never known. Whichever answer is correct, its appearance has already changed our perception of humanity's place in the cosmos, as the last light from 3I Atlas vanished from our telescopes. The question still echoes: did we just witness a strange natural phenomenon, or were we just visited by another civilization? No one can answer that. But perhaps the mere fact that we must ask the question is proof that we are no longer as alone as we once thought.